Hi y'all, Connie here. So today I am going to show you how I make this endless kind of granny square. It's just one big continuous granny square for this top. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to start at the beginning and then we'll pop through some of the different steps along the way. All right, let me get you a little bit closer here. All right, now, all right, you can start with a magic loop if you want, but I am just going to do a chain 4 and join it. To make a loop, and we'll work into this circle. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to insert my hook into the center of this loop and do 3 double crochets. So if you want to, you can do a chain 3 and count that as your first double crochet, or you can just do a little chain to kind of get you started, which is what I prefer, so that I can actually work into the top of this double crochet when I get back to it. Okay, so here we go. That's 1, 2, 3, then chain 2, back in the center, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and you see I'm just working over that tail, and then I will use that to cinch up the center when I'm ready to sew that end in. Get some more yarn here. That's 2, 3, and I'm going to pull that around a little bit, give myself some more room. Chain 2, get around there. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so there is our center square. Chain 2, and now I can join to the top of my first double crochet, and so I'm gonna count backwards here because it's easier to find it that way. So here's the top of our third one. So that's 1, 2, 3, and see, because I just did that little chain at the beginning, it is kind of slanted. Come on now. This is always harder to do through the camera than it is right in front of my eyeballs. All right, so we're going to join with a slip stitch. Oops, stay on camera. All right, so we're joined with a slip stitch. And now, instead of slip stitching across to this corner, like you might normally do for a traditional granny square, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to turn it over so that the wrong side is facing. See, here's our tail. And now I'm going to, you can either chain 2 more and count that as your first double crochet, or you can kind of pull up a loop and go ahead and start double crocheting, which is what I prefer to do most of the time. Okay, and that pulling up that loop a little bit extra just gives you the height of, the height of your double crochet. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, and now this is our corner, so we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do 3 more double crochets right in the same space. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now this is our side, so we're only going to chain 1 in between our group of 3. So there's 1, 2, oops, 3, chain 2 because this is a corner, right? 1, get more yarn. 2, 3, so now we have 2 corners. Chain 1, go to our next corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, and if you feel like you're running out of room, you can always pull that over a little bit. And there's number 3. Okay, so chain 1, whoops. Chain 1 for the side. Then you do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets in each corner. 1, 2, 3 more double crochets. 2, 3. Okay, and now we are back around again. We're going to chain 1 this time. And then we're going to join to the top of our first double crochet. So again, I'm going to count backwards. 1, 2, 3. So you see how it's kind of lopsided there. And then this is a 2-ply yarn, so I want to try and get under both of those strands there on each side. Okay. And then join it with a slip stitch. Okay. Snug it up if you'd like. Now we're going to chain 1 and turn. So now we have the right side facing again. And so by alternating, oops, pull up that loop a little bit taller. By alternating every round like this, it helps combat the twist that you often see with fabric that's worked with the right side facing all the time, because crochet stitches have a natural sort of lean to them, and so when you work all of them facing the same way, those leans kind of stack up on top of each other. Okay, so this is the side. Here's our corner. So 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, chain 1 to come across the side. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, next corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 3 more in the same spot. And more yarn. Next side, so chain 1, 1, whoops, 2, 3, chain 1, and next corner. So see how quickly that grows. Of course, the rounds don't go quite so quickly after the first few. Chain 2, 1, 2, 3. All right, last side, we're almost around. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, back to the corner. It's the last corner. 1, more yarn. 2, 3, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets in this corner. 2, 3. Okay, so now we're ready to join again. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's the first leg, the second leg. And you can use a stitch marker too to mark that if it will make it easier for you. All right, so there's our slip stitch join. We're going to chain 1, turn. I'll show you one last time so I can put a stitch marker in there for you. Okay, so there's our first double crochet, and then right there, that's the top of our first stitch. So I'll take the stitch marker and go ahead and put that in right there while it's nice and easy to see the top V, right? And then when I get back around, then I don't have to hunt for it. I know exactly where to insert my hook to join. Okay, so that is all you do for these little squares, making sure that you turn your work at the end of each round, right? And then as you come across the sides, you do stitches in groups of 3 with a chain 1 in between them, and then each corner will have 2 groups of 3 with a chain 2 in between. And so you just keep going like that until it gets as big as you want it to be. And let me grab this bigger piece here and find the end. All right, so here, oops, and I just pulled some of it out. So here is the bigger piece, and this is the size that I want it to be. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to chain 1, and instead of joining with a slip stitch, I'm going to do what's called an invisible join. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this yarn. I'm going to leave a nice long tail so that it is easier to sew in. I've got my needle here. All right, and then I'm going to pull this loop out, and then I'm going to thread it on my needle. I'm not going to pull it tight because I don't want that end to get, or that stitch to get too tight. Okay, so I thread this on my needle. All right, and now we're going to join this thread the same way we would if we were joining with a slip stitch, right? Oh, actually, you know what? We did the chain 1, so we're going to go to the next one, because what we're doing is we're duplicating, get out of here, we're duplicating the top of this stitch, okay? So we're going to go to the second double crochet there, and we're going to pull this up, and we're going to come down through this chain. Sorry, my focus got wonky. And then down through the center of the top of that double crochet, and then just out the back. And when we pull this tight, it's going to kind of mimic the top of that stitch so that we get a nice clean join. And then I can turn this over. So here's the back of that. And I like to do just sort of a tiny knot by grabbing some yarn underneath and then splitting. This one doesn't want to split. Oh, come on now. There we go. And splitting the end that I am tying off there. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that tight to kind of secure it, and then I can go ahead and sew in this end. And when I sew in ends on double crochets, I kind of just follow the loops of the yarn and go wherever feels the most invisible. So you can come straight across this group on the bottom here, right? Or you can go up and down the double crochets. You can come across the double crochets. So here's this is the top of the double crochets. You can go one stitch at a time and just sort of loop through, right? And that'll move you across to this next group of 3. Okay, so that just pulls that yarn across there. Or you can go up and down. Sorry, it helps if I stay on the screen. And so there, I'm just going down the body of that. And then I come across and go back up this one. And you can do it a little at a time or the whole thing at a time, whatever works best for you. And then I like to come back down the same way that I went at some point. But with this yarn, I need to make sure that I snag a loop somewhere so that it doesn't just unravel it, because this yarn doesn't really split. A 4-ply yarn or a worsted weight yarn, something that's a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger. See, that's still kind of pulled down a little bit. It's easier to weave your yarn in more invisibly because the plies help hide it, and they split, and you can just sort of make it disappear right in there. So this is a little bit trickier, which is why I wanted to show you how I'm weaving in my ends. But if you kind of zigzag and go back over the same spot so that it's going back on itself, it's going to be very difficult for that yarn to unravel. So that was probably more excessive in sewing than necessary. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that there. That's all I need to do on that one. And then I'll go ahead and show you. So here's the center, and this does need to be blocked. See, it's kind of wobbly from me working on it, and different tension and stuff like that. So this is the beginning end on the big one. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to thread the yarn onto my needle. And then for this first round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this thread all the way around so that I can cinch up this loop nice and tight, right? See, I can pull that. And I already worked over the top of it a little bit, and so that's why I was able to pull it up right there. I'm just going to kind of come through here, bring it around back to the beginning, and then a little bit extra. I'm going to pull it nice and snug up. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to make sort of a tiny little knot here. So I'm going to get this yarn right there that's underneath my stitch, split my yarn, which it's not much of a split, but a little bit. So I make a teeny tiny knot. And y'all be sure that your stitches are good, because these are really difficult knots to get out if you do have to try and take them out, because they really are basically invisible. Okay, so now, and I'm going to just kind of come across right here. And I'm just going to zigzag again a little bit. Oh, is that too far? That was too far. You see that big loop of yarn sticking out there? I don't want to do that, because that can get snagged and yank my end out or cause a big pucker, so that wouldn't be good. So if you see something like that, rather than just continuing on, you can pull it back and then move forward from there. All right, so this is my corner here, so I've got a little bit more room to work under those stitches, right? So now I'm just gonna grab this yarn down here to loop it around and go back the same direction. 1 and 2. We'll come back this way and go all the way across there. Since this is the beginning, I've got more loops. All right. pull that through, not too tight. And if I can get my scissors, then I can go ahead and, yeah, you don't want to pull it too tight or it'll make it pucker. All right, go ahead and cut that. And there, that is all we need to do for that. And then I've got an end here where I joined on a new ball, and that's kind of the same thing. So I would take this. I know sewing in ends isn't very exciting, but sometimes it's nice to see how someone else does it. So if this had been a continuous strand, these would have been looped together, right? That would have looped there. So what I do is I take the one on the bottom and I thread it back up the way that one comes out, right? And then I'll sew this one in coming this way maybe. All right, and so I would do the same thing, just sort of weaving it in, zigzagging it, going back and forth a little bit. And then this one, so this is the one from the top, so I'll take this one down, kind of the same direction that the other one came from. Okay. And then that helps make a nice, snug little join. Actually, we'll go this way with these. Okay. And then I'm going to come across this way and under here and then zigzag along however, right? Oops. So once I finish sewing those in, then I can also cut those off and that will be done, right? Okay, so the next step obviously would be to sew them together, but I like to block before I sew together because it makes seaming just that much easier. So I will block these pieces and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I seam them together.